soon as the little recording button comes up.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen also. Okay, can everyone see my screen and also hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So hello everyone, thank you for taking time out of your day to come to my presentation. My name is Gabi Hoard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School. So throughout this semester, I took a class through edX.com studying philosophy and critical thinking. I was drawn to this course because I was feeling slightly overwhelmed and confused by the intense buzz of events and information brought about by our current social and political climate, and I wanted to find something that would help me make sense of it all. In this course, I completed 6 modules about the foundations of philosophy and critical thinking. And essentially, I learned how to learn. What I mean by this is I gained knowledge about what it means to be a cognitive being in this society, learning how to manipulate our knowledge and understandings of the world to think more critically and authentically. I explored different concepts within philosophy and researched how to incorporate critical thinking in the classroom. With the end of my course, I realized this knowledge is something that everyone should have access to. We should be teaching philosophy and critical thinking in our schools. But not only that, I noticed something that was absent in my learning, and that is the importance of teaching interdisciplinary philosophy. In my course, I learned about many different frameworks of philosophy, including those centered around religion, identity, religion, identity, morality, ethics, political philosophy, and even feminist philosophy. The study of each different type of philosophy helps build different kinds of critical thinking skills. Philosophy of religion, for example, is useful in developing and practicing reasoning skills because it takes the evaluation of concepts such as good versus evil and requires people to apply these concepts to their personal values and moral beliefs. However, throughout this learning, I realized that even under this wide umbrella of knowledge, whose intent is to help all people make sense of our world, these ideas were still centered around Eurocentric and Western ideologies of what society is. The state of society can be organized in many different ways, in a literal and theoretical sense, through economic and political philosophies and moral philosophy. Moral philosophy helps a person understand why they make decisions for themselves within this society. Something that's important to note when talking about moral philosophy is social contract theory. Social contract theory is an important aspect to this conversation because it is used to discuss the rights and responsibilities of each individual within society. When being part of a society, individuals must forgo a certain amount of freedom for the betterment of the population as a whole. There are 4 main interpretations of the social contract theory, all of which have a common fundamental belief that human beings are rational, free, equal individuals. However, these theories vary quite drastically when it comes to discussions of what morality, ethics, and ideas of freedom truly mean. Social contract theory is applicable in the real world because of political philosophy. When discussing political philosophy, it is critical to understand that political structures are much different from economic structures, even though they are closely connected. The ultimate goal of understanding the concepts within economic and political philosophies is in answering the questions of what an ideal society might or should look like and whether it could even exist. One branch of philosophy that ties moral and political philosophies together is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics looks at the character of an individual and asks, are they a good person? This branch of philosophy is where we see the underlying biases rise. One of the famous philosophers that most people are familiar with, Plato, has a theory about virtue ethics called the ideal state. The ideal state theory evaluates society within 3 classes: the economic class, which are the producers and consumers, the guardian class, who are the intellectual elites, the auxiliary class, who are the defenders. This model claims to be primarily focused on justice. According to Plato, a just society is the best society, which leads to the best possible life. Furthermore, this model is meant to represent three aspects of the soul as they guide the individual: desire, which is the driving force; spirit, which controls desire; and reason, which directs and controls the spirit. However, under this model of moral philosophy and how it intersects with our democratic capitalist system, which are our political and economic philosophies, there are people within some of these classes that do not have the best possible life because of the elitism which this model is founded upon. This linkage is damaging to individuals and their role in society because this ideal state model is inherently biased for many reasons, but the most prominent one that stuck out to me is that philosophers are part of the intellectual elite category, and from the knowledge that I gained in my edX course about critical thinking and reasoning skills, it is unjust that this one class of people gets to determine where everyone else stands. This information about virtue ethics and social contract theory are what led me to wonder about BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, philosophers, and if there was any pushback against the biases within Eurocentric philosophy. I found that there are, in fact, many contemporary movements to shift the meaning of philosophy in different ways. The two prominent frameworks are comparative philosophy and global philosophy. Comparative philosophy, sometimes called cross-cultural philosophy, is a field where philosophers work to solve problems by intentionally integrating sources from across different cultural, linguistic, and philosophical streams. Global philosophy is the view that philosophers should go beyond the resources available within just one philosophical tradition, engaging with many different philosophical approaches in order to solve problems. The journal Philosophy East and West, published by University of Hawaii Press, explores the ways by which this can be done. The author writes about how ethnocentric forces in philosophy can be overcome to give room for multicultural diversity. They explain a generic model of human attitudes towards ethnocentrism, the advantages of diverse lenses, and how biases negatively impact this work. I found that there are many different types of non-Western philosophy: Buddhist philosophy, Indian philosophy, Chinese philosophy, Africana philosophy, Afro-Caribbean philosophy, and many, many more. In addition, there are Black American philosophers who are also left out of the conversation. Angela Davis, W.E.B. Du Bois, Huey Newton, and Bell Hooks, for example, are not taught in schools the ways other philosophers are, but they should be. The American Philosophical Association has multiple blogs and references on why this is important. An interview with Jay Garfield, a well-known professor within this field whose focus is Buddhist philosophy, discusses how diverse lenses in philosophy give you an entirely different perspective on what ethical questions are and how to go about addressing them, because different cultures have different perceptions and experiences of what ethics means. Another piece, written by University of Connecticut professor Alexis McLeod, writes about her thoughts on how to accurately diversify philosophy. She writes that the main problem is that folks within this field should work towards listening and learning from others about what philosophy should be, rather than dictating to others what philosophy is. Her proposal is to focus more on pluralist philosophy, where all voices are truly listened to and heard, rather than inclusivist philosophy, where she argues that marginalized voices may get a seat at the table, but they still remain marginalized by more dominant figures. The interesting thing to me is that without the knowledge that I gained about cognitive biases, logical fallacies, and all different areas of philosophy that I studied in my course, I never would have been equipped with the critical thinking skills to recognize that there was a problem with the ways philosophy is taught in the first place. This realization is what leads me to the conclusion that philosophy should be taught in every school. Philosophical concepts are all founded upon basic argument structures, but the crucial aspect is knowing how to apply these structures to questions that people face every day. Questions of religion, morality, identity, social constructs, politics, and more are all explored within philosophy. And while all these questions may not be answered, understanding the key concepts will at least help people gain a better understanding. In my personal experience with learning about these concepts, I truly found myself thinking more clearly in day-to-day activities, from doing homework in a variety of classes, having conversations with family members, and being a leader in school during the pandemic. I feel that I was able and am able to make more critical connections and solve problems much better. And with the problems that I am not able to solve, I feel more patience in working to solve them eventually or cope with seemingly negative outcomes. This is why I believe that philosophy must be taught to students in every classroom. While it may be helpful for students to know about the ideas of Kant and Plato, it is far more important for students to apply philosophical theories and ways of knowledge to how they learn and solve problems. The varying interpretations of each respective theory and branch of philosophy helped me gain a better understanding of the complexities of human life because they raised questions about existentialism that have persisted throughout time, asking what it means to be a human on this earth, weighing and measuring the importance of our values. Intellectually, people might know what these things mean, but understanding the core concepts of morality and ethics help develop a more holistic outlook on the world. Philosophy itself is the practice of subjecting one's belief and actions to rational scrutiny. With philosophy in the classroom, students explore the worth of a claim through the lens of logic and reasoning, and work through ideas collaboratively and independently. This helps the students actually put their knowledge to test in real time, actively practicing critical thinking and cognitive reasoning skills. When critically interrogating ideas and reflecting upon your own understanding, in many instances, people come to realize that their own beliefs are flawed, or at the very least, need refinement. This is important thing for people to understand about philosophy, because in learning the core concepts of the subject, a student is inherently forced to reflect on the ways in which they see the world, as that is how they will process the information being given to them. There are various things that can help support students and teachers in the journey of philosophy, reasoning, and critical thinking within education, such as different and specific ways of writing, ways of talking, ways of feedback, and ways of teaching. Yet overall, if the fundamental principles and practices are put into place in a philosophy class, it will surely be a success, especially since the definition of success within this type of course will likely be up to the individual. My learning about biases in Eurocentric philosophy, the necessity of diverse lenses, and the skills that are developed in learning philosophy itself is the fundamental intersection that shows the importance of teaching interdisciplinary philosophy. Thank you.
Great job. Let me turn off our recording.